The house was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that lets you sleep. I was lying on the edge of the bed when I heard it, Elaine's voice sliding through the cracked hallway door. "Tomorrow, we'll put her in a nursing home." The words were clean, calm, practiced. Not a threat, a plan. Michael didn't answer. His silence told me everything. I kept my eyes open in the dark. No breath, no movement, just listening. "She won't fight it," Elaine whispered. "She barely understands half the things we tell her anymore." A soft laugh. Not loud, not nervous, confident. "She won't even know it's happening." My fingers curled around the blanket. Not fear, awareness, a switch turning on. Michael muttered something, too soft to catch. But it wasn't disagreement. He didn't say no. He didn't say she's my mother. He didn't say anything that mattered. I sat up slowly. My hip ached, but I didn't care. The Christmas lights outside pushed thin stripes of color across the wall. Red, green, blue, like cheap decorations covering a rotten smell. I reached for the small lamp, turned it on low, and pulled my suitcase out from under the bed. Not hurried, not shaking, steady. A stack of folded clothes waited on the chair. I put them in the suitcase, one by one, no wasted movement. A coat, 2 pairs of pants. The scarf Michael once told me made me look old-fashioned. It went in too. Then the envelope, the thick one, the one I found when Elaine forgot to lock the drawer in the study. I slid it into the inside pocket of my bag. Next, the passport. Next, the small cash pouch I kept hidden in the lining of my sweater drawer. They never knew about that. I zipped the bag. My hands didn't tremble. In the hallway, Elaine kept talking. "Once she's out, we can finish the paperwork. Ridgeview will send the forms. Michael, stop worrying. It's better for everyone." Better for everyone. Except the woman they were discussing like a broken chair taking up space. A floorboard creaked under Michael's feet. Still no protest. Still that empty silence. The kind of silence that isn't confusion. It's consent. I stood beside the bed and listened to the last thing Elaine said before their door shut. "She doesn't know what's going on. It'll be easy." A cold clarity settled in my chest. Not panic, not sadness, just the truth lining up in front of me, one clear piece after another. I slipped my shoes on. My coat followed. I paused at the dresser long enough to take the small photo of Jacob, my grandson. His smile faded from too much sun, the only person in that house who looked me in the eye anymore. It went into the pocket with the passport. I reached for the doorknob, stopped, looked at my room one last time. Not a home, just a space they kept me in until the real plan could start. I opened the door quietly. The hallway smelled like the expensive candle Elaine always lit when guests came over. Something floral and sharp, a smell meant to impress people who never stayed long. Their bedroom door was closed, lights off, voices gone. Good. I moved down the hallway, my steps small and controlled. At the top of the stairs, I waited, listening for any shift in the air. Nothing. I went down slowly, gripping the railing, careful with my hip. At the bottom step, the Christmas tree glowed from the corner of the living room. Boxes wrapped in silver paper sat underneath. None had my name on them, not even the fake kind written for show. In the kitchen, an empty glass sat on the counter. My glass. The one Elaine replaced last month because the old one looked worn. I passed it without stopping. At the back door, I slipped on my gloves. The cold metal lock clicked open softly. I pulled the door toward me and stepped onto the small concrete patio. The air hit my face. Cold, sharp, honest. Inside, silence. Outside, freedom. I pulled the door shut. Not a slam. A clean, final close. At the edge of the yard, I stopped and looked back at the house. Not out of longing, out of confirmation. They thought I couldn't hear, but I did. And leaving wasn't running. Leaving was the first right decision I'd made under that roof. I lifted the bag onto my shoulder, turned away from the house, and started walking into the cold night. Tomorrow, they planned to get rid of me. Tonight, I got ahead of them. The backyard was dark when I stepped out, but the cold air felt cleaner than anything inside that house. My bag rested against my hip. The snow under the porch light looked untouched. Fitting. No one had bothered to check on me in hours. The kitchen window glowed behind me. Voices floated faintly through the glass. Elaine laughing, Michael mumbling. Not once did either of them mention my name. "Mom's fine," Elaine's voice drifted out. "She goes to bed early. She won't notice anything." Another laugh. Dismissive, confident. I gripped the handle of my suitcase. "You won't notice me leaving either," I whispered. "Good." I walked toward the side gate. My breath turned white in front of me. Not fear, just cold. The gate latch stuck for a moment, then clicked open. Sharp, small sounds in the quiet night. The street looked empty. A few Christmas lights blinked from polished houses, perfect lawns, cars that never seemed to get dirty. That neighborhood had never felt like mine. I walked quickly, pulling the suitcase behind me. My shoes were quiet on the pavement. Snowflakes stuck to the sleeve of my coat. No hesitation. No turning back. If I stay, I disappear, I murmured to myself. If I leave, I start breathing again. 2 blocks down, the bus stop sat under a dim street lamp. A metal bench. Cold, hard, honest. I sat, letting the suitcase rest beside me. My fingers were stiff from the air, but steady. Always steady. A digital clock on the pole blinked, 1:47 a.m., 13 minutes until the next bus. Good. Enough time to think without being interrupted by people pretending to care. The silence wasn't empty. It felt earned. I opened my coat slightly and checked the envelope inside, the thick one holding the forged signature, the bank withdrawals, the paperwork they thought I would never find. The edge of one document brushed my glove. "They plan to erase me," I whispered. "They forgot I can still read." A shuffle of footsteps sounded behind the bench. I didn't move, just listened. A teenage boy walked past, hoodie up, earbuds in. He didn't look at me. I didn't need him to. The street went quiet again. I glanced back toward Michael's house. No lights had turned on. No one was running outside calling my name. No door slamming. No scrambling footsteps. Nothing. Of course. The truth sat heavy in my chest, but it didn't break me. It clarified me. "They didn't lose me tonight," I muttered. "They gave me back to myself." A car drove by, slow, headlights brushing my face. I kept my eyes forward. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Michael appeared on the screen. "Mom, are you awake?" I let the screen go dark. The timing told me everything. He wasn't checking on me. He was checking on the plan. "Too late," I murmured. "You should have checked earlier." Another text buzzed through. "Elaine thinks you're asleep. Just wanted to say good night." Good night. That word stung more than the forged paperwork. I put the phone away. The bus headlights appeared from a distance, cutting through the cold air. I stood, pulling my suitcase upright. My hip protested, but my legs held firm. The bus pulled to a stop. The door hissed open. The driver looked at me with mild surprise. "Cold night to be out?" "Not as cold as the house I left." He nodded, lifted his hand toward the aisle. "Anywhere in particular?" "The 2 o'clock route downtown, by the old library." "Hop in." I stepped inside. The warm air hit my face. I sat halfway down the aisle, keeping my bag close. The bus pulled away from the curb. Outside the window, Michael's street slid past, quiet, dark, peaceful, in the way things are peaceful when people think no one is watching. I watched each house fade behind the bus until the neighborhood disappeared entirely. My fingers brushed the envelope again, no second guessing, no regret. Leaving wasn't fear, I whispered. Leaving was proof that I still choose. The driver glanced up at the rearview mirror. "You okay back there?" "I'm better than I've been in months." He nodded once and focused on the road. The city lights grew brighter as we approached downtown. Snow softened the sidewalks, but the air smelled freer, more alive. I took a deep breath. They thought I would sleep through everything, I whispered to myself. They thought wrong. The bus slowed near the old library. I stood, steady and calm. The driver opened the door, opened the avastam. Sure you'll be all right? I'm awake now, I answered. That's enough. I stepped off the bus into the cold, pulled my suitcase close, and walked into the night that belonged to me again. The bus pulled away, leaving only the hiss of exhaust and the thin lights from the station roof. I sat on the cold bench, suitcase beside my leg, coat zipped tight. No fear, just control settling into place. The envelope rested inside my pocket, thick and heavy. I pulled it out slowly. Snow landed on the corner, melting into tiny dark spots. I brushed it off and opened the flap. Let's see what they thought I couldn't understand. The first page showed my name printed neatly at the top. Below it, a power of attorney form. My forged signature sat at the bottom. I held the page up to the station light. You really thought this would pass. The slant was wrong, the spacing uneven, the loop in the end stiff and unnatural. Anyone who'd seen my handwriting once would know it wasn't mine. Another page slid loose. Bank transfer records. $210,000 gone. The number didn't sting. The deceit did. So this is what family looks like when they stop pretending. A passing janitor glanced briefly in my direction, then returned to sweeping the platform. No one else lingered. Good. I didn't need an audience. I pulled the next document from the stack, a medical authorization form. My name typed. Michael's name next to decision maker. A bitter laugh slipped out. Decision maker? He couldn't even decide what to say when his wife planned to lock me up. Another page. This one had handwriting. Elaine's perfect block letters. Redirect all mail next cycle. Mail they wanted. Mail they needed. Mail they didn't want me to see. They planned the future without me, I murmured. Too bad I'm still here. Footsteps echoed in the distance. A young couple passed by, arguing quietly. I waited until their voices faded before digging deeper into the envelope. A notarization receipt, dated on a day I'd spent recovering on the couch, leg wrapped, barely able to stand. Michael had called twice that afternoon to check in. He was forging my name between those calls. My fingers tightened around the paper. You checked in to see if I was weak enough to miss this. The snow began falling harder. I tucked the papers under my coat and kept reading. Every page showed the same imitation signature. Every transfer approved by me. Every decision made without my knowledge. A train horn sounded in the distance. The station lights flickered once. I kept my eyes on the documents. This is more than theft, I said under my breath. This is erasing a woman who fed you, raised you, and bought you your first house. I organized the pages into a clean stack. My breath fogged in front of me as I pressed them flat with the edge of my hand. A voice came from near the street. Ma'am, you waiting for someone? A cab driver stepped out of his vehicle, hands shoved in his jacket pockets. The warm air from the heater spilled out behind him. I lifted the envelope. Waiting for the morning to open a bank. He nodded slowly. Cold night for business. It's colder living with people who think you're disposable. His eyebrows lifted slightly, but he didn't pry. Want me to wait? Meet her off. Yes. He leaned back against the doorframe while I held the stack of documents on my lap. These papers, I muttered, are the reason I walked out that door alive. I pulled out a smaller folded sheet at the back, an admissions draft for an assisted living facility, my name, my age, a note in bold, shows early signs of cognitive decline. Cognitive decline. I read the line again. Elaine had said the same thing last week when I forgot where she placed her keys after organizing my coat pocket. Convenient, I whispered. You hide the keys. Then accuse me of losing them. I folded the page crisply. The truth didn't hurt now. It fueled me. A thin gust of wind blew snow across the bench. I tucked the papers back inside the envelope and sealed it. They copied my signature, I murmured, but not my sense. The cab driver gestured toward his car. Sun's almost up. Bank'll open soon. I stood, gripping the handle of my suitcase. The envelope stayed against my chest, protected by my coat. He opened the cab door. Warm air flooded out again. "You sure you're okay?" he asked. "I'm awake," I answered. "And that's enough." I stepped into the back seat, placed the envelope on my lap, and watched the gray outline of downtown appear through the windshield. Every page in that envelope was a weapon. Not for revenge, for justice. And when the bank opened, justice would start. On my terms, not theirs. The sky was still dark when the taxi pulled up in front of Fairmount Bank. The building lights were on, but the doors were locked. I stood close to the glass, holding the envelope under my coat. A guard inside noticed me and cracked the door. "Bank opens at 8, ma'am." "I have an appointment with your manager, Daniel Lee." He checked a clipboard. "You're Mrs. Bennett?" "Yes." He stepped aside immediately. "Come in, he's expecting you." I walked through the empty lobby. Only 2 desks had their lamps on. The rest of the room looked half asleep. A door opened near the back. A man in a navy suit approached, straight posture, calm voice. "Mrs. Bennett, I'm Daniel. Come with me." His office was neat, organized folders, labeled drawers, nothing out of place. He motioned to the chair in front of his desk. "Patrice sent me your preliminary email," Daniel began. "I reviewed the documents you attached, but I need to hear it directly from you." I placed the envelope on his desk. "Everything is in here." He opened it carefully, sliding out the forged transfer papers. He studied the signature first, then the account routing. "This isn't your handwriting." "No." He held the page a little closer to the light. "It looks like someone tried to imitate your old signature. The loop on the B is wrong." They didn't study long enough. Daniel continued reading until he stopped at a highlighted line. 210,000. "And you never approved this." "No." "And you didn't authorize your son or his wife to access your accounts?" "I revoked that years ago, quietly." Daniel tapped the page with his pen. "Then we're calling this what it is, fraud." I nodded once. "That's why I came here at dawn." He looked up. "You came prepared." Preparation is cheaper than regret. Daniel took a breath, then opened another drawer and pulled out a form. "This freezes every account connected to your name. No withdrawals, no transfers, no external access until we're done investigating." "Good. Freeze everything." He adjusted the form toward me. "Before you sign, I need you to understand what this means. Your son may try to contact you. He may insist this is a mistake. It's not a mistake. And he may accuse you of acting out of emotion. I'm acting out of proof." Daniel's eyes tightened with approval. "Then let's move forward." He printed 2 more documents. One was a certified fraud report. The other was a temporary protection notice that blocked all third-party requests. "I'll need your signature here, here, and here," he instructed. I signed without hesitation. He watched my hand. "You're steady." "I've been awake all night." Most people shake when they realize someone stole from them. "I'm done shaking." Daniel set the papers aside and folded his hands. "Do you want me to contact your son?" "No." "Are you sure?" "Yes. I don't need conversations. I need barriers." He nodded. "Then I'll call our legal department instead." He picked up his phone. "Put me through to compliance. Yes. Secure case. Full freeze for client Bennett. Yes. Fraudulent transfer suspected. No. Client is here and fully aware." He hung up and turned back to me. "It's done." "That fast?" "Fraud leaves a trace," Daniel replied, "and we can follow every piece of it." I leaned back in the chair. "Then I'd like printed confirmation." He smiled faintly. "Of course." He got up and walked to the printer room. I could hear the machine warming up. When he returned, he placed a stack of papers in front of me. "This is your official freeze order. This is the fraud claim. And this," he tapped the last page, "is the record showing that the signature on the transfer doesn't match your verified signature on file." I looked at it closely. A red stamp at the bottom read, "Signature mismatch. High concern." Daniel sat again. "Mrs. Bennett, this is a strong case. Whoever forged this made several mistakes." "I expected that." "What will you do now?" he asked. "Fix the rest." He lowered his voice. "Your son may panic when he can't access anything. I count on it." Daniel hesitated, then said, "If he calls me, do you want me to tell him you were here?" "No, tell him nothing. Let him wonder." "That usually pushes people to reveal more than they intend." "I know." Daniel gathered the paperwork neatly. "We'll monitor your accounts. If anyone attempts to log in, you'll get an alert. If someone tries to file for access, you'll get another alert. Everything will go through my office first." "I appreciate that." "Mrs. Bennett?" "Yes." "You're handling this better than most clients. I had a warning." He didn't ask what kind. Daniel slid the final document toward me. "Sign this last page. It gives us permission to pursue internal investigation." I signed it slowly, making sure every letter was clear, deliberate. He checked the signature. "This one matches." "Of course it does." Daniel stood and extended his hand. "We'll protect you." "I know." He walked me to the lobby as the sun began to rise outside. Light hit the glass doors, sharp and clean. Just before I stepped out, Daniel said, "If you need anything else, come back. You're not alone in this." "I'll be back," I replied, holding the folder tight. This was only the beginning. I stepped outside. A cold morning. A warm folder in my hand, and every door behind me now locked to them, not to me. Hannah Porter's office sat on the third floor of a quiet brick building. No holiday decorations, no soft music, just a receptionist who glanced up as I stepped in. "Mrs. Bennett?" "That's me." "She's ready for you. Second door on the right." I walked down the short hallway and pushed the door open. Hannah stood behind her desk, early 40s, tailored gray suit, hair pulled back like she had already finished half a day's work before I arrived. She gestured toward a chair. "Take a seat, Mrs. Bennett. Patrice warned me you'd be coming with a full story. I brought documents, too." "That usually means trouble," Hannah replied, "but it also means you're ready to fix it." I placed the folder on her desk. She opened it immediately, scanning the freeze order, the fraud report, and the mismatched signature notice. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. 210,000 taken without consent. Forged signature. "And they tried to redirect your mail?" "All quietly." She kept reading. "How long has this been going on?" "Long enough for me to stop giving them chances." Hannah leaned back in her chair. "Good. People make faster progress when they stop negotiating their own safety." I crossed my hands in my lap. "So tell me what comes next." "First," she said, pulling out a clean document, "we rewrite your will, from scratch, not an update, a replacement that wipes the old one out entirely. I want everything to go to Emily." Hannah nodded. "We'll structure it so no one can challenge it, not even family." "That's the idea." She turned to the next page. "Second, we revoke their access to anything with your name on it, power of attorney, medical directives, bank permissions." I already started that with Daniel. "Good. But banks aren't the only place that keeps files. Doctors, hospitals, insurers, they all have copies. I'll make sure every one of those gets replaced." "That's what I need." Hannah took a quiet breath, studying me. "You're calm. Most people walk in shaking." "I had a long night." "A bad one?" "A clarifying one." She didn't push further. Instead, she pulled up a fresh template on her computer. "Let's start with your will. Who do you want as primary executor?" "Emily." "And secondary?" "No secondary." Hannah paused her typing. "You're certain?" "Completely." "Then Emily it is." She typed for a few minutes, then printed the first section. "Review this. Make sure the names and addresses are correct." I scanned the page. Everything was accurate. I slid it back to her. "Good," she said. "Now let's talk about your son." "There's not much to discuss." "I still need a statement for the file." "He used my trust in him as a tool, and she used him." "That's clear enough," Hannah replied. "It will support the case." She printed another set of documents. "These," she explained, "revoke every previous authorization. After today, neither your son nor his wife can make a single request in your name, Not for accounts, not for medical decisions, nothing. That's what I want. She added signature tabs to each page. Start here. I signed one page after another. Clear strokes. No hesitation. Hannah watched me carefully. You sign like someone who already made peace with her choice. I made peace the moment I walked out of their house. She gave a small nod. Then this part will be easy. And when the last signature was done, she stacked the pages neatly and clipped them together. Next step, mail redirection. We'll notify the post office that any attempt to reroute your mail without your personal request is prohibited. They tried that already. That explains the forged signature. She printed a short form and passed it to me. Sign here, and the post office will block every unauthorized request. I signed again. Hannah leaned forward. Before we go further, I need to ask, are you safe where you're staying? I am. And you're not planning to go back to them? No. Good, because from the documents you brought, it looks like they wanted more than money. They wanted control. That ended the moment I heard them talk. Hannah studied me again, longer this time, like she was trying to understand how someone my age could appear so composed in the middle of legal chaos. You know, she said slowly, most clients in your position talk about forgiveness or about fixing the relationship. You're not asking for either. I'm not here to repair anything. I'm here to protect myself. That's the smartest thing you've said all morning. She printed another packet, the power of attorney. This names Emily as your sole representative. No one else gets access, not even to request information. Perfect. You understand, Hannah added. This is the paperwork that stops the cycle. That's why I'm signing it. She placed sticky tabs on every line that needed my signature. Work through these. I'll check each page after. I signed them one by one. The room stayed quiet except for the sound of my pen moving across the paper. When I finished, she gathered everything and tapped the stack lightly. All right. As of today, you're legally protected. They have no pathway back into your finances or your decisions. Good. Hannah leaned back, folding her arms softly. Do you want them notified of anything? They'll figure it out when the doors close. That tends to happen? I stood, placing the folder under my arm. Hannah followed me to the doorway. If you need me, my direct line is on the cover page. I'll keep it. And Mrs. Bennett? I turned. You handled today with more strength than most people half your age. I didn't have another option. Hannah gave a small nod. You chose the right one. I stepped out of the office, holding the documents tight. The hallway felt brighter than when I walked in. For the first time in a long time, the next step was mine, and only mine. I rented a small room above a hardware store for the night. Nothing fancy, just a bed, a desk, and a lamp bright enough for paperwork. After everything that happened, the quiet felt strange. I placed my bag on the desk and opened it. Inside were the documents I hadn't touched in months. Old statements, tax returns, insurance forms. But one folder sat at the bottom, heavier than the rest, the Lake House file. I pulled it out and opened it. The first page was familiar. My deed, signed years ago. I bought that property with savings from a lifetime of teaching. My retreat, my peace, the place I never let anyone else control. But as I flipped the second page, my hands stopped. A mortgage notice, not mine. I leaned closer. The details were typed clearly. A new loan issued 3 months ago. Withdrawals tied directly to my name. Someone had used my property as collateral. A small handwritten note was attached to the corner. Redirect all mail. E. Elaine's handwriting. I sat back in the chair. Of course, I murmured. I turned another page. More statements, more requests. Every one of them unauthorized. Footsteps in the hallway outside made the floor creak. But I didn't look up. I kept reading. The next page listed an estimated payment schedule with a signature line at the bottom. A signature meant to be mine. I held it up to the lamp. Same sloppy loop, same uneven line, same attempt to copy something she didn't understand. I spoke aloud to the empty room. You wanted everything. The lake house, the savings, the control. and silence from me. I set the page down slowly. They planned it together, I continued. They counted on me not checking anything. It was almost insulting how predictable their strategy was. I picked up the mortgage file again and reread the loan terms. High interest, early withdrawal penalties. It looked exactly like a plan meant to drain someone dry. My eyes stayed on the numbers. Not this time. The heater clicked softly. The room felt smaller, but my thoughts felt sharper. I opened the rest of the envelope. More documents, more lists of debts, more payment schedules, all attached to my name. Page after page, I traced the same pattern: forged signatures, rerouted mail, attempts to hide paperwork, all of it coordinated, none of it accidental. I placed everything in a neat stack. They wanted the house, I said quietly. They wanted the cash. And when they were done, they wanted me gone. The lamp flickered, but I didn't stop reading. Then I reached another sheet. One I didn't remember signing at all. A transfer request for the emergency fund I kept hidden. The signature was shaky, a poor imitation, one anyone with eyes could challenge. I tapped the page lightly. You weren't even careful. There was no anger in my voice, just recognition, confirmation, the kind that comes when the last piece of a puzzle finally clicks. I pulled a notepad toward me and wrote down 3 lines. Mortgage fraud, mail interference, property misuse. I underlined each one. Everything I needed was right here in this room. Every proof, every document, every mistake they made while thinking I wouldn't look. The heater rattled again. I closed the file and sat back. They planned everything, I said quietly, except me finding out. I opened the file once more and scanned the loan number. I would bring it to Clara tomorrow. She would know exactly what to do with it. My phone buzzed once, a notification from the bank, account access attempt blocked. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. They're getting nervous. I stood and walked to the window. The street below was empty. A few streetlights reflected off the snow, but the town was silent. For the first time since leaving that house, I felt something settle inside me. Not fear, not sadness. Clarity. I walked back to the desk, packed every document carefully, and closed the folder. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. I turned off the lamp. The room went dark, but the path forward was the clearest it had ever been. The Elder Rights Center sat between a clinic and a bakery, quiet and plain, like a building people only visited when they had to. I pushed the glass door open and stepped inside. A woman at the front desk looked up immediately. "Mrs. Bennett?" "That's right." She stood. "Lydia's waiting for you. Second office on the left." I walked down the short hallway and knocked lightly. "Come in," a calm voice answered. Lydia Carter sat behind a clean wooden desk. Organized folders, soft gray sweater, glasses perched low, like she'd been reading before I arrived. She gestured to the chair across from her. "You made good time, Mrs. Bennett." "I didn't want to waste any." "I read the documents your lawyer emailed. You've had a long week." "A necessary one." Lydia opened a folder with my name written neatly on the label. "Let's start simple. You're here to rebuild your protections." "Exactly. And you want every old authorization removed, medical, financial, legal?" "All of it." Lydia nodded. "Good. That means we're rebuilding from zero. Some people try to hold on to old ties. That's usually where things fall apart." "Old ties cost me enough." She sat back slightly. "Before we begin, I'm bringing in someone else. She handles complex family misuse cases. You'll like her." Lydia pressed a button on her desk phone. "Clara? She's here." Moments later, the door opened. Clara Monroe stepped in. Calm blazer, warm eyes, steady posture. The kind of person who never rushed, but always seemed prepared. "Mrs. Bennett," Clara greeted, "I've heard you have a full file for us." "That's one way to put it." Clara smiled faintly and sat beside Lydia. "Let's hear what you want first. We'll handle the details." I placed my folder on the desk. "Reset everything. My son and his wife don't get access to a single part of my life anymore." Clara nodded once, no hesitation. "We can do that." Lydia added, We'll start with revoking your power of attorney. We'll file it immediately. Once it's active, no one can speak for you. Good. And, Clara continued, we'll replace your medical directives. You'll choose who manages that. I'll manage it myself. Clara made a note. Most seniors choose a backup, but you don't have to. You're competent enough to hold full authority. I prefer it that way. Lydia slid a stack of fresh forms my way. These replace every outdated document. We'll file them today. Agencies will process them within 48 hours. I looked at the pages. What about my estate? That's next, Clara replied. Who do you want as your primary beneficiary? Emily. Only Emily. No share for your son? No. Clara didn't flinch. Then we'll craft the will to reflect that. Strong language, clear terms, hard to challenge. That's what I need. Lydia leaned forward. Before we proceed, we need to address something. The mortgage you found, the forged papers, the redirected mail. They were planning a full takeover of everything I own. Clara exchanged a glance with Lydia, then looked at me. And you left before they could. That's right. Clara folded her hands. Then you're not a victim. You're ahead. That's the goal. Lydia added a tab to the first document. Start signing here. I signed the first page, then the next, and the next. Clara reviewed each line as I moved through the stack. You know, most clients in your situation ask if they're being too harsh. I'm being correct. Clara gave a small approving nod. That's the right approach. I kept signing. The sound of the pen felt like the only noise in the room. Lydia placed another form in front of me. This notifies all agencies that you're reinstating full control. If your son or daughter-in-law attempts anything, requests, inquiries, impersonations, they get denied. Perfect. They may push back, Clara said, usually through guilt or confusion. They already tried both. And? It didn't work. Clara smiled softly. Then you'll handle what comes next. I glanced at the stack of forms. How long until everything is enforced? Most of it becomes active today, Lydia replied. The rest within 2 days. Good. Clara leaned in slightly. Before we finish, I want to ask something personal, not legal. Go ahead. Are you doing all this out of fear or out of clarity? Clarity. Then you'll be strong through the rest. Lydia added another signature tab. This one protects your mail. No changes allowed without your in-person verification. They already tried redirecting it. That ends today, she replied firmly. I signed the final page. Lydia stamped and sorted the documents, then slid a copy toward me. These are yours. Keep them with you. You now have full legal control of every part of your life. Clara gathered her binder. Tomorrow bring the lake house file. We'll dismantle whatever they attempted. I'll bring everything. Lydia walked me to the door. If they call or send messages, you're not obligated to respond. Silence is often the strongest position. I learned that recently, Clara added. And if anything changes, anything at all, you call us. We don't process cases like yours halfway. We finish them. I believe you. They both gave small nods, the look professionals reserve for clients who don't crumble. As I stepped into the hallway, documents in hand, one thought settled clearly. They tried to take everything. Instead, they pushed me into the one place they never expected: control. The afternoon was quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't weigh on my shoulders anymore. I'd made tea, opened the window, and was sorting the new documents Lydia gave me when someone knocked. 3 sharp knocks. Not nervous, not hesitant. I froze for half a second. No one ever knocked here without calling first. Another knock. Grandma, it's me, Jacob. My hand tightened on the table edge. Jacob, my grandson, the only one in that house who ever looked at me without calculation. I walked to the door and opened it just enough to see his face, older than I remembered, eyes tired in a way kids his age shouldn't look. Can I come in? He asked quietly. I stepped aside, shoes off at the door. He gave a small nod and slipped them off, like he used to when he was 8 and didn't want to track mud into my kitchen. Once inside, He looked around the apartment, slow and careful. "So, this is where you've been staying?" "It is. It's different from what they said." "I'm sure it is." He exhaled long, sitting on the small chair near the table. "They're losing their minds, Grandma." "Are they?" "Dad's pacing all day. Elaine keeps checking her phone like it's going to explode. They won't say what happened, but even I can see something serious went down." I didn't reply. I let him keep talking. "They keep whispering the same thing. She messed everything up." "Why would she do this? What if someone sees the paperwork?" My eyebrow lifted. "Paperwork?" Jacob swallowed. "I don't know all of it. I just know there are folders. Folders with your name. Folders that Dad hides every time I come into the room." I sat across from him. "Why are you here, Jacob?" He blinked. "Because you disappeared. And nobody in that house will tell me the truth. There's a lot they won't tell you." I figured. He rubbed his palms together. "Grandma, you look different. Not bad different. Just lighter. That's what happens when you stop carrying 30 years of other people's mess." He let out a faint laugh, but his eyes were still worried. "Are you safe here?" "I am." "Are you hurt?" "No." "Are they the reason you left?" "Yes." His jaw tightened, quiet, controlled anger, the kind he inherited from my side, not theirs. "Tell me what they did," Jacob murmured. "I'll tell you what matters," I replied. "They crossed lines they had no right to cross, lines that don't get uncrossed." He nodded. "I figured something like that." Silence filled the room for a moment, not heavy, not awkward, just truth settling between us. Then he looked at me again. "Grandma, can I ask something without you getting upset?" "Go ahead." "Do you ever think about coming back, just to talk it out? Just once?" "No." He nodded slowly, expecting that answer but hoping he was wrong. "Okay." I leaned back in my chair. "Jacob, I didn't leave that house because I was confused or emotional. I left because staying one more day would have destroyed me. And I refuse to let anyone, family or not, erase who I am." His throat tightened. "I knew something wasn't right. Every time I saw you this year, you looked smaller." "I'm not small anymore." "No," he whispered. "You're not." He reached into his hoodie pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I found this in Dad's office. I shouldn't have taken it, but I didn't want them to shred it before you saw it." I opened it. It wasn't the forged documents. I already had those. It was worse. A printed plan, a timeline, dates, notes in Elaine's handwriting. "Call facility Monday. Her mail goes through me only. Bank forms ready by next week. She won't notice." Jacob watched my face. "I didn't read all of it, just enough to know it wasn't good." "You did the right thing bringing it." "I didn't bring it for Dad," he said quickly. "I brought it for you." I folded the page slowly and slid it into my folder. "This stays with me." "I know." He hesitated. "You don't have to tell me everything. Just tell me one thing. Are you planning to cut us all off?" "Not all." He looked up sharply. "I judge people by what they do, not the family tree," I said, "and you didn't do what they did." Relief flickered across his face, soft but real. He swallowed. "Can I still see you, even if you're done with them? You don't need permission from anyone to visit your grandmother." His shoulders dropped, finally unclenching. "Good, because I'm not losing you." "You won't." Jacob stood, stepped closer, and for the first time in years, he hugged me. Not a polite family hug, a real one. Tight, honest. When he stepped back, there was a steadiness in his voice I'd never heard before. "They're lying to themselves, Grandma, about everything. When they talk about you, they sound like people who know they pushed someone too far. That's their burden. And what's yours? Freedom." Jacob nodded again, understanding more than his age should allow. He grabbed his shoes but paused at the door. "If they ask where I was, I'm not telling them." "That's your choice." "It is." He reached for the doorknob, then glanced back. "You're stronger than all of them, you know." "I learned that the night I left." He gave a small smile. "I'll be back soon. Whenever you're ready." The door closed behind him with a soft click. For the first time since I escaped that house, I didn't feel alone. I felt backed. Not by a crowd, just by one decent person who still remembered who I'd been before they tried to turn me into nothing. Jacob didn't bring guilt. He brought truth. And sometimes, one witness is all you need. The letter came on a cold morning, slipped under my apartment door like it belonged there. A white envelope, heavy paper, my name typed across the front. I didn't touch it at first. I stood there for a few seconds, listening to the quiet in the hallway, making sure no one was waiting outside. A gentle knock broke the silence. Margaret's voice floated in. "You're up early," she noted, stepping inside with her scarf still around her neck. "There's a letter," I answered. "From her." Margaret's brow tightened. "You want company?" "I want clarity." We sat at the small kitchen table. I placed the envelope between us. Margaret waited while I opened it carefully, flattening the pages with my palm. The handwriting was familiar, too neat, too careful. Elaine always performed even when no one asked her to. I read the first line aloud. "We're worried about you." Margaret rolled her eyes before I could continue. "Of course they are, when the money stops." I kept reading. "Your sudden disappearance has caused confusion for the family. The children are asking questions." "The children don't speak to me," I noted, keeping my voice even. "They avoid eye contact at dinner." Margaret leaned back. "She thinks you forgot that." The letter went on. "Managing your affairs while you recovered wasn't easy, but we did it with love. You leaving without warning felt unkind." I paused there. "Unkind," I repeated. Margaret lifted the page to look closer. She used that word on purpose. "She did," I agreed. "She wants me to feel like I owe them an apology." And Margaret tapped a finger on the table. "Do you?" "No." I placed the letter down. "They weren't helping me. They were managing me." I picked it up again, reading the next lines. "The banks are calling. Vendors are confused. We're under pressure. Please contact us so we can fix this together." Margaret gave a short laugh. "Fix? They mean give us back what we lost." "They didn't lose anything that belonged to them in the first place." The last part of the letter was the longest. "We're still willing to sit down, talk, and restore order, but we cannot do that while you remain unreachable. Families handle things together." I folded the paper slowly, making one clean edge. "Together," I echoed quietly. They didn't want together. They wanted access. Margaret leaned her elbows on the table. "How do you feel?" "Clear," I answered. "They're still pretending nothing happened." Margaret nodded. "That's their pattern. They rewrite the story and you're supposed to go along." And I lifted the letter again and looked at the signature. Not warm, not personal, just her name in ink that looked expensive but felt empty. "Burn it?" Margaret offered, already reaching for the drawer where she kept matches. "Not yet." I placed the letter flat on the table again. "Let it sit. It can wait the way I waited." Margaret watched me. "You're steadier than most people in your position." "Shock came and went days ago," I replied. "Now it's just truth. Truth is quiet." We sat for a moment while the kettle clicked behind us. Margaret poured 2 cups of tea without speaking. The steam rose between us. "You're not angry," she observed gently. "No." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. "Anger would give them too much space. I'm done giving them anything." Margaret gave a small, approving nod. "Good. You're choosing peace, not war." "Peace on my terms," I agreed. "Not theirs." The apartment stayed still while I reread certain lines. Each sentence fit the same pattern: concern without responsibility, guilt without apology, fear disguised as care. They wanted to lock me away. I said quietly, and now they're offended I walked out first. Margaret's expression softened. Nora, you've survived things that would break most people. Don't let a letter shake you. It doesn't, I assured her. It only confirms what I already knew. I placed the letter in the drawer beside the stove, not ripped, not burned, just stored as a record of who they chose to be. Margaret stood. What's your next step? I'll answer, I replied, but not to them. She nodded. Hannah? And Clara, I added. They'll know what to do with this kind of message. Margaret smiled. Good. Let the professionals handle the mess. I walked her to the door. She squeezed my hand before leaving. You're doing the right thing, Nora. I'm doing the necessary thing, I corrected softly. When she left, the apartment felt calm again. I brewed another cup of tea and sat at the table where the letter had been a few minutes earlier. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel doubt. Only steadiness. My phone buzzed once. I didn't check it. I had learned which sounds deserved attention. Unkind, I murmured to the empty room. Kindness without limits invites thieves. The kettle clicked again behind me, the same steady rhythm it always made. Ordinary, predictable, the opposite of the house I left behind. I took a slow sip and looked at the drawer where the letter waited. It's your turn to wait, I said quietly. Then I turned off my phone, put on my coat, and prepared to take the next step, one I would take calmly, legally, and completely awake. Jacob found me on a Thursday afternoon. I was shelving returned books in the quiet corner of the library when the front door creaked open. Judith glanced up from the desk, then looked toward me with a small tilt of her head. Someone stood just inside the entrance, tall, thin jacket, hands in his pockets, unsure whether to walk forward or run away. Jacob. My grandson. He spotted me before I could move. His shoulders lowered, like he'd been holding his breath for days. Nana, he greeted softly as he walked closer. I closed the book I'd been holding. You found me. I looked at the volunteer list online, he explained. Your name was there. I hoped it was really you. Judith quietly slipped into the back room to give us space. Jacob stopped a few feet from me. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of someone who had thought through every word. Dad is losing his mind. Mom keeps pacing around the house. They don't know where you are. Then they finally understand how it feels, I answered. He swallowed hard. I didn't come to defend them. Good. He pulled out a chair near the children's reading area. Can we sit? I nodded. We sat facing each other. His hands stayed clasped between his knees, a posture he used as a boy whenever he felt sorry for something he didn't know how to fix. I need to tell you something, Jacob began. I heard them talking the morning you left. My eyes met his. What did you hear? Mom told Dad you were slipping, that you kept asking the same questions, that you couldn't manage your own money anymore. His jaw tightened. Dad didn't correct her. He just stood there. The words didn't hurt. They confirmed what I already knew. Jacob continued. They said you'd be better off somewhere with supervision. I didn't understand at first. I thought they meant a nurse. They meant a facility, I replied calmly. A place where no one would question what they were doing. His shoulders slumped. I should have asked more. I should have checked on you. You're 18, Jacob. Adults twice your age missed the truth on purpose. He looked down. Still feels wrong. Feeling wrong means your conscience works, I told him. That's more than I can say for the two people raising you. He didn't argue. He just nodded once, slow and heavy. A few seconds passed before he spoke again. I miss you. That one slipped straight through the armor I'd built. You used to tell me stories, he added, about the garden, about Dad when he was my age. I didn't realize how much I missed hearing your voice until it was gone. My hands softened around the armrest. I didn't disappear, Jacob. I stepped away from people who wanted to erase me. He looked up quickly. I never wanted that. I know. He leaned back in the chair, rubbing his palms together. I don't want to take sides, But I want you to know I see what happened, and I'm sorry it took me this long." "Apology accepted," I answered. "Not because you owe me, but because you mean it." Jacob nodded again, eyes damp but not falling apart. He was still a boy, but a boy trying to understand the world without letting it harden him. He pulled something from his pocket, a small wooden puzzle I'd given him years ago. "I kept it on my desk," he explained. "When you left, I checked it every day. I didn't know why. Maybe it made me feel closer to you." A warmth filled the space between us. Quiet, steady, earned. "I'll visit again," he promised, "if that's all right." "You can visit any time," I replied. His mouth lifted into a small, relieved smile. Not big, not dramatic, just real. "I don't know what Mom and Dad told people," he added, "but whatever story they're telling, it's not the truth." "The truth is simple," I said. "I heard them planning what to do with me like I wasn't a person, so I walked out before they could finish." His breath caught. "You're stronger than any of them." "I'm just awake," I answered, "and I'm not going back to sleep for anyone." Jacob stood slowly. "Do you want me to tell them I found you?" "No," I replied. "Not yet." "You sure?" "I want peace. They want access. Let them sit in the silence a little longer." Jacob didn't push. Instead, he opened his arms. I stepped forward and let him hug me. Tight, careful, grateful. "You're still my Nana," he whispered. "And you're still the good one in the family." He pulled back with a quiet laugh. "I'll come again," he reminded me. "Come as yourself, not as their messenger. Always." He walked toward the door, giving me one last look before stepping outside into the afternoon light. When the door closed, the library felt warmer. Not forgiven, yet. Not healed, yet. But shifted. A new kind of beginning. I returned to the shelf I'd been working on. My hands no longer felt heavy. Jacob had seen me. Jacob had chosen truth, and that, in its own quiet way, was the first real mercy I'd felt in months. Clara called just after noon. I recognized the number from the Elder Rights Center and answered before the second ring. Her voice came steady. "Nora, something landed on my desk this morning. It has your name on it." "I'm listening." "It's from their attorney. Andrew and Elaine sent a request for a formal conversation. They want a meeting to discuss accounts, assets, and what they call family misunderstandings." I let out a quiet breath. "They're trying to regain footing." "That's what it looks like," Clara confirmed. Papers rustled on her end. "They're asking whether you're open to negotiation." "Negotiation," I repeated. "With people who forged my name?" Clara didn't respond right away. She understood the weight of the question. "You don't owe them a seat at the table," she finally noted. "You already removed them from every legal position that mattered. What's your recommendation?" "Document your stance," Clara replied. "Once it's filed, any attempt to challenge you becomes harder." "Let's do it." "All right," she continued. "I prepared a statement of intent. It clarifies that you revoked their access, that all decisions were voluntary and made with full capacity, and that you won't participate in mediation." "Read it to me." She read line by line. The language was clean, direct, factual. Nora Bennett acted independently. No coercion. All transfers frozen by her request. No contact required going forward. No mediation will be considered. All rights remain solely in her name. The clarity settled through me like a weight being set down. Clara paused. "How does that sound?" "Correct." "I'll bring it to you," she offered. "It needs your signature." "Come by the library," I instructed. "I'm here for another hour." 15 minutes later, I saw her walking across the quiet lobby. Clean coat, organized binder, calm presence. She always carried herself like someone who protected people for a living. We sat at the same small table where Jacob and I had talked. Clara opened the binder, turning it toward me. "Here, read it one more time." I read every sentence slowly. No drama, no emotion, just words aligned with truth. "This works," I confirmed. "Then sign here, here, and here." I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake, not even once. When the last signature was done, Clara slid the pages back into the binder and clicked it shut. "That's it," she announced. "They can send letters, emails, messages, threats, or pleas. It won't matter. These papers close their path." "Good." Clara leaned back a little, studying me. "You're steady." "I've had practice." "You know," she added softly, "most women your age crumble at this stage. They break under guilt or pressure, but you've stayed centered the entire time." "I learned something," I replied. "Silence isn't weakness, it's strategy." Clara smiled slightly. "Then you'll appreciate this next part. Their attorney hinted they may pursue further steps if you don't respond." "And will they?" "No, they don't want court. Court means records, testimonies, witnesses. Court means explaining forged signatures under oath." She tapped the binder lightly. "They're bluffing." "Then let them bluff," I said calmly. "I'm not moving." Clara nodded. "I'll file this within the hour. Once it's processed, even if they try anything, the judge will review this first. And this," she tapped the binder, "protects you." We stood. She reached out and touched my arm gently, respectful but firm. "You're doing everything right, Nora." "I'm doing everything necessary." Clara gave one small approving nod. "Call me if they attempt contact again, but honestly, they're more scared than anything." "Good," I replied. "A little fear might teach them what decency couldn't." Clara exhaled through a short laugh. "I like the way you think." She left the library a moment later. The door closed behind her, and the space fell quiet again. I walked back to the reading desk, but the shelves were blurry for a moment. Not from tears, just from the shift inside me. Something unlocked. Something settled. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I checked the screen. Voicemail. Andrew Elaine, unknown. 3 missed calls. 0 sincerity. Another buzz. A text appeared. "Mom, please, let's talk. This has gone far enough." I stared at the message and let the screen go dark. Another text came seconds later. "We can fix this if you just stop everything you're doing." The phrasing said everything. They wanted control, not connection. They wanted access, not accountability. I placed the phone face down on the desk. I wasn't running from them. I wasn't afraid of them. And I wasn't negotiating with anyone who tried to erase me. The library clock ticked in the background, steady, even, honest. My signature now sat in a binder on its way to the courthouse. My silence was no longer their advantage. It was mine. The next morning arrived quietly. No pounding footsteps. No whispered plans behind a half-closed door. No messages demanding explanations. Just light, soft and steady, moving across the small apartment table where my tea kettle waited. I woke before the alarm. My body felt rested in a way it hadn't in months. I moved through the room slowly, the way people move when something heavy has finally been set down. The window was cracked open. Cold air drifted in, carrying the faint sound of seagulls. Snow dusted the ledge. Not a storm, just a clean layer of morning. I pulled on my robe, turned on the kettle, and let the water heat while I stood at the window. This time, the quiet didn't feel like expectation. It felt like ownership. A gentle knock broke the silence. Margaret's voice floated in. "You awake?" "Yes," I answered, opening the door. She stepped inside with a small bag of groceries. "You left the porch light on." "That's how I knew you were up early." "I forgot to turn it off." "Or," she countered, placing the bag on the counter, "you finally slept." I poured her a cup of tea without asking. She sat across from me, shawl wrapped around her shoulders. Her eyes softened when she looked at me. "You look different today," she noted. "Lighter." "It's the first morning in a long time," I replied, "where no one else gets to decide what happens next." She nodded slowly. "Feels good, doesn't it?" "Better than I expected." We sat quietly for a moment. She didn't rush me. She didn't pry. She let me settle into the stillness on my own terms. On the windowsill, the little plant Leia brought 2 weeks earlier had pushed out a new leaf. Small, bright, steady. Not symbolic, just proof that things grow when left alone long enough to breathe. Margaret took a sip of her tea. Any messages from them? My phone's off. Keeping it that way? For now, she chuckled. Smart. I crossed my hands on the table. Their lawyer will get Clara's filing today. That should calm the storm. Or stir it, she reminded gently. It won't matter. They don't have the power they think they have. Margaret watched my face carefully. You're not angry, are you? No, I answered. I'm free. She sat back with a satisfied nod. That's the line right there. The kettle clicked again as it cooled. Outside, a neighbor scraped snow from a car. The world continued, simple and predictable, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a burden moving through it. Margaret placed her mug down. What will you do today? Walk to the library, I replied. Sort the returns, maybe help with the afternoon reading hour. Sounds peaceful. That's the goal, she smiled. You didn't think you'd reach this day, did you? I hoped, quietly. And now that it's here, I intend to keep it. She reached across the table and touched my hand gently. You earned this, Nora. I earned clarity, I corrected softly. Peace is simply what comes after. We finished our tea in silence. A few minutes later, Margaret stood to leave. She pulled on her gloves and buttoned her coat. At the door, she turned back. One more thing, she added. If you ever question whether you did the right thing, remember the night you heard them whisper about locking you away. That wasn't love. This, your life now. This is dignity. I felt the truth settle deep. Thank you. Margaret opened the door. I'll see you later. Enjoy your morning. When she left, the apartment grew quiet again. But this time the quiet didn't press on me. It lifted. I washed the mugs slowly, dried them, and placed them back on the shelf. Simple movements, ordinary movements, movements that belonged entirely to me. Before stepping outside, I turned my phone on for one moment. Notifications filled the screen, missed calls, long texts, 2 emails marked urgent. I didn't open a single one. My thumb hovered for a second, then I powered the phone off again and slipped it into the drawer beside the stove. Not out of avoidance, out of choice. I put on my coat and scarf, locked the door behind me, and stepped into the thin sunlight drifting across the walkway. The air felt crisp, honest, nothing hiding in it. I wasn't walking away from anyone. I was simply walking toward myself. As I headed down the sidewalk toward the library, one clear thought stayed with me. Justice didn't need rage, just truth, a signature, and the strength to leave. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of the quiet. I belonged in it. When I walked to the library that morning, the snow was thin and the street was quiet. Every step reminded me that peace doesn't arrive with noise. It arrives when we stop giving our power away. I didn't win because I raised my voice. I won because I finally chose myself. If you're listening to this and you've lived long enough to see both kindness and betrayal, I hope my story reminds you of one thing. You're never too old to protect your dignity, and you're never too weak to take your life back. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Your support means more than you know. If my story gave you strength or comfort, you're welcome to stay with us here on Grandma Life Stories. We share real voices, real lessons, and real justice. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, feel free to subscribe, leave a comment, or share the video with someone who might need it. I'll be here in the next chapter, and I hope you will be too. Until then, take care of yourself. Stay safe, and remember, peace is something you're allowed to choose.